Welcome, fellow Stardust. Are you ready for a scare? I see you've come back for more. If you're new here, buckle up, and thank you for joining me today. My name is DeRay, aka Rainbow Fright, lover of all things dark, creepy, and weird. Today's movie review will be on Horror: The Hills Have Eyes remake.
And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night, our flag was still there.
Not every remake is good or even needed, but this one just warmed my heart. It gave us everything that the original did and then some. Wes Craven saw the successes of the remakes of Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Amityville and wanted to hop on that train. His longtime producing partner, Marianne Maddalena, came across Alexandre Aja and Gregory Levasseur soon after their French slasher film High Tension was released. After watching High Tension, Wes knew that he wanted to work with this duo. He felt that they had a good handle on what was terrifying. When Alexander and Gregory were asked if they were interested in doing a remake of The Hills Have Eyes, they were excited and shocked. The Hills Have Eyes was a film that the two friends bonded over as kids. It was their favorite film. They watched it all the time. So, like the original film, we have a family who is stranded in the middle of a desert when on their way to California. They become the hunting targets of the cannibalistic family that lives in the desert. Only this time, they crash their car and trailer because of a booby trap set by this desert family. This was one scene that I liked more in the original film than in the remake. I like it more when people are given all of the warnings and all the opportunities to avoid terrible events, but walk into them anyway. In the original film, the gas attendant Fred tells the family to stay on the main road, but Big Bob doesn't listen. He swerves to miss a rabbit that's on the road and ends up crashing the SUV and trailer. In the remake, the gas attendant basically lures the family into the booby trap set by the cannibalistic family. However, the crash is 10 times better. The scene took 3 days to shoot. Even though it's on camera for about a minute, it was well worth the effort. They made the giant rock that the SUV crashes into out of cement. They wanted to make sure that it was able to take the impact of the SUV. They only had one SUV, so they only had one opportunity for the take. So there was a lot of prepping before this shot was even done. They even added an extra tire to the trailer in the middle, that way it could perform the zigzag maneuvers better without tipping over. The producers really wanted to shoot in the same desert as before, the Mojave Desert in California. But when they scouted the location, they saw that there were a bunch of condominiums now built. Alexander and Gregory wanted to shoot in Morocco because they felt that the landscape there was exactly what they were looking for. To create a threatening atmosphere, they were looking for jagged rocks with chaotic formations. Producers were hesitant to shoot in Morocco because they were afraid of terrorist attacks. So they asked the filmmakers to scout locations in Mexico, New Mexico, and Namibia, South Africa. None of the locations met the writer-director's needs, so the producers gave in and they settled on Morocco. The story takes place in New Mexico. As you can imagine, it was another hot set with temperatures getting up to 120 degrees again. In this desert, the quintessential gas station is needed once again. So one was built on location by production designer Joseph Nimick. It looked so real that people would stop by to get gas. As of the latest article I read from 2017, the gas station is still there and still gets mistaken for a working gas station. The gas station was named Gas Haven, which rhymes with Wes Craven. The remake also needed a couple of re-edits in order to get it down to an R rating from NC-17. If you remember from my last video, the original edit of the original film was an X rating. Some people view this as torture porn, but I wouldn't go that far. Even though we do get a bit more gruesome when it comes to the attacks on the Carter family, it's not just for the sake sake of showing blood and guts. It just feels more real, and it looks like how it would look if you were actually in that situation. They used a lot of CGI for the blood splatters and a lot of other gags, but it's done in a very methodical way and not overused in any way. Wes wanted the writers to come up with something original for this story while still staying true to the original concept. So they came up with this idea of this minor town being the site for nuclear testing, specifically Agent Orange that was used by the US in Vietnam. Those living there suffer from physical mutations and birth defects, and these mutants are mutated as f***. They wanted these creatures to look as real as possible, and they certainly achieved that. For Ruby and the young girl that is found in one of the minor houses, they used CGI to deform their faces. I really enjoyed this effect. I didn't think that it looked weird or out of place with the rest of the creatures. And man, I really do love all of these disgusting creatures. It would be cool to hire someone to do me up like one of them for Halloween or some event. Another huge difference between the remake and the original is the death of the gas attendant. In the OG version, when Bob gets back to the gas station by foot, Fred tells him a little backstory about the Desert family. Fred was the father of Papa Jupiter, and when he was a kid, Jupiter killed all of their livestock and his sister, so Fred took him out into the desert and beat him with a tire iron and left him for dead. Jupiter survived the attack and went on to have a family with Big Mama, who gave birth to Pluto, Mars, and Ruby. Fred is then ironically beaten to death by Jupiter with a tire iron. This was a wonderfully tragic end to poor old Fred's story. But in the remake, when Bob makes it back to the gas station, he instead sees newspaper clippings. These clippings talk about people going missing after the nuclear testing. We also see a bunch of photos of deformed children who were affected by the chemicals. Bob then finds the gas attendant, who is drunk and being taunted by Jupiter. The gas attendant, who isn't given a name this time around, is fed up with living in fear and has finally worked up the courage to off himself with his shotgun. And oh, they did a good job with that one. Horrified at this sight, Bob tries to leave, but is captured by Jupiter. Of course, being a bloodhound, I really enjoyed the remake's take on this scene. Although I do appreciate the OG's ability to surprise us with the first human death of the film. Soon after this, we get Bob's explosion. My absolute favorite part in both films. When rewatching this scene after rewatching the original, I felt all kinds of emotions. It was just so exciting to see this redone in such a masterful way. To get this shot, the DP had to use a Steadicam and walked from the trailer to the mark where Bob was. That was about the length of a football field, and he had to walk as fast as possible. Then in post, they sped that shot up. And for the shot of Bob on the burning stake, they used a mix of CGI and practical effects. Bob this time looked like he was really burnt to a crisp. Yummy. The rape scene in the original film was a controversial one. To lighten up the mood, when the cast and crew were set up to take the shot, Pluto and Brenda started to make out. The entire set broke into laughter, and they were able to continue shooting without any weird tension. Funny enough, I think they do something similar to this in the remake, but on screen. Right before Lizard assaults Brenda, they have a little pillow fight, and you can't help but burst into laughter when you see this. As expected, Lynn dies at the end of this scene. But in this film, we get to experience the absolute horror of losing your partner in the worst way possible. Doug walks in to see his wife dead with a gunshot wound to her head. She suddenly takes a big gasp of air, giving Doug some hope, but dies immediately after taking that last breath. While we have a lot of moments like this that are direct recreations from the original, we also get a couple of new scenes since we have a bit of a different storyline. In real life, in the 60s, actual mannequins were used at testing sites in New Mexico, and you'll see a bunch bunch of these mannequins when Doug goes deeper into the minor town where the mutant family lives. We get to see Big Brain, Mama, and Cyst. We also get an epic battle between Pluto and Doug, leaving Big Brain vulnerable after taunting Doug just minutes before. After this, Ruby saves the day once again, but in a much bigger way. I'll let you see how that goes down for yourself. The soundtrack is gold, and the sound design is creepy all on its own. We've got this orchestral music with pops of guitar with a little taste of Western music. It was impactful and epic, and really helped to set this desolate and eerie tone. So in conclusion, I couldn't have asked for anything more in a remake, and I'm surprised I haven't seen the sequel yet. I've seen the sequel for the original film, and that one was okay, but this new sequel is a completely different storyline, and National Guard trainees are now the target. It's written by Wes Craven's son, Jonathan Craven, and directed by Martin Weiss. The trailer looks really good. Continuing on his remake kick, Wes Craven went on to then remake The Last House on the Left, another one I'm eager to check out. I watched the original and liked it, so I'm down to see what the writer-directors did for this one. There is really not one thing I would change about this film. It, to me, was perfect. I can watch it over and over again. It gets 5 rainbow skulls out of 5. Well, thank you again for joining me today, Stardust. I hope I see you next Thursday. Next week's movie review will be a subscriber request, The Blair Witch Project, submitted by the Poltergeist. If you'd like to submit a movie for my monthly drawing for a subscriber request, all you have to do is subscribe and put the movie in the comment section. You can find the schedule for my subscriber requests in my channel description. Also, I'll be uploading a video this Saturday, so if you haven't already, go ahead and hop on the Rainbow Fright freight train and hit that subscribe button and notification bell. That way you'll be notified every week when I upload new videos. I'll see you next time. Peace.